All right, Josh, we are live.
Why? How? When?
Well, I realized that if I waited for you to say you'd be ready, it'd be another 20 minutes. So I just went ahead and did it.
Weeks.
Yeah.
I'm not ready, but happy to be here.
What are we doing today?
Well, I am what we call confused, and so I've been trying to. I want to explore continuous delivery stuff, right? GitOps and continuous delivery platforms, and so on. So where I'm coming from is, I just moved from Travis CI last year, right? And I moved to GitHub Actions, which is same, basically. Right. They're continuous integration platforms, not really continuous delivery platforms, right? The thing of it is, though, I don't see why not. Why couldn't they be, right? Like, I can get my code from Git push to production in my GitHub action. And so it feels like that, 64K ought to be enough. That ought to be enough. I don't know what I'm missing, And if you look around in the ecosystem in the last 5 years, it's just been like a Cambrian explosion of continuous delivery platforms. And there's got to be a reason. There's got to be a reason, right? There's got to be a thing. I kind of for a brief moment there, kind of got in my head the whole conceit of Spinnaker, right? The build and bake pipeline. I want something that handles everything after my artifact has been built. But again, why couldn't that have just been Jenkins? And so then it occurs to me, okay, well, there's Canary testing, there's blue-green, there's all the stuff that has to do with the complexity that the platform itself gives you, right? It's not a feature, it's a bug. I have all this extra stuff. I can take advantage of it. That's cool. My CI tool doesn't understand that stuff. It doesn't know about Canary testing. It doesn't know about validating the thing that you've deployed. It doesn't know about promoting it. And so I want all that stuff. My CI doesn't give me that stuff. So people end up running these really janky bash scripts, and sometimes it's coupled with janky YAML, and it's not great. So I was like, okay, well, I've got a few weeks between now and the new year, and sometime in the new year as well. I figured I could take a little time and explore, right? And actually, I just had a great discussion last night at 11 o'clock p.m. PET, which is California, with my friend Kristen Dupuis, who is part of Atomist. And Atomist have this continuous, it's an automation tool. It's not, they don't want me to say CD because it's superset of that, and I can see what they mean. And what they have is something that, frankly, I'm going to judge everything else by, because it's exactly what I was looking for, right? What it does is you have this concept of skills, and you have policy. So the first thing that you notice about their stuff, there's no artifacts in the Git repository. There's nothing. No YAML, no config files, no dot directories, just nothing. It's a policy applied organizationally. And you can say this repository is a Git repository for Node. And so you can apply these policies, and then suddenly, whenever there's a Git push, it just automatically does everything in the NPM skill to take a Node package, build it into a deliverable, optimized JavaScript thing, package it up into a container, and then push it to GCR. See what I'm saying?
So is that, in a way, like the CI, like a generic CI answer to build packs?
Feels like it, right? But it gets better. Here's where it gets really crazy. Yes, that's what I was thinking. It's this convention thing, right? Which is great. But the next thing that it has is events, right? So one thing I've been doing, I've been using this GitHub Actions. And with GitHub Actions, there's no real way. You have to actually manually publish these events. Right, and you can do that, but you have to make everything aware of your own schema for events, right?
Right.
So it's called a repository dispatch, and you can send an arbitrary payload to any repository, and then in that repository, in the GitHub Action pipeline description, you can say that I want to be triggered on the receipt of this event. So I can have an event for production deployments versus development deployments or whatever. But you have to then do that. So that means that everywhere you want to talk to GitHub to trigger these actions, you end up needing to get access to a GitHub Access token, and you need to write REST API calls. It's not convenient, right? And yeah, you could ferret that away and put it away in an actual reusable GitHub action inside of GitHub Actions, plural. But this just seemed nice, and the reason that the way they're doing this is they're using something called Datomic, which is a closure-based database that has a really good sense of like what's happening you can say, hey, on the data, before the data arrives, call this. After the data has arrived, call that, right? So it's like a before and after, pre-commit, post-commit. You get all these really great hooks for data, and they kind of surface that as like an event predicate selector mechanism. So I can say, whenever there's a GitHub commit, and it's to this branch, and it has this label, and whatever, and the code is an npm project, then do this, and you can generically describe these events. You can say, I want to do this in response to all of these different events, and they've got integrations for GCR, so you can get GCR events, integrations with your Git repository, integrations with all sorts of stuff, right? Just everything. So they're already there, listening for these events, and they'll invoke you when some combination of those events is true, right? And that's all policy. It never lives in your pipeline. You just say, click, 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 click. When this happens, call this. And it was really cool. And it's like, I want events. Because one thing I want, the whole idea of promotion, I want to be able to say, once somebody has gone to Slack and clicked this link in this bot, then promote whatever's in development, this staging environment, whatever, promote whatever that is to production.
But only if it's already passed all the appropriate tests and stuff.
Sure, but that
would also be an event.
What?
That would also be an event, though, right?
Yeah, totally. You have all that, and then the skill shows you the link in Slack.
Yep.
A bot shows you the Slack link, and then somebody clicks on that, and now it's. And here's the other thing: what does promotion mean? If you're using GitHub, then everything looks like a Git repository, right?
Right.
But it's like that doesn't mean that, right? If I have something in my staging environment, all I really need is the image name from the spec for the Kubernetes resources. I just want to change the image name. I want to patch, the image name for what's in production. Maybe that's it. Or maybe I want to copy the whole thing over, but ensure I've got different replica sets. So now you've got this idea of customization. And so synchronizing one thing to another, that could be a totally different thing besides pushing to a Git branch. It doesn't have to be the same thing, So so that was kind of cool. I like that. And we could, but then there's, as there's like 1,000 other ways to do this. And I don't know any of it.
Can I maybe make you mentioned that there was like a Cambrian explosion of these tools.
Oh yeah, can I list them?
I mean, you could, but we don't have all day.
Well, can I just?
I was just going to give us like 10 off the top of your head. Don't look them up.
Yeah, Atomist Go. We talked about that. Razee, Razee. You ever hear that one?
Nope.
Argo project, of course. Concourse, of course. Spinnaker, of course. Flux. Drone CI, which is kind of like Travis or GitHub Actions for your local, you can run it in your own data center. Jenkins X and HashiCorp Waypoint. All of these things give me a quick on-ramp to production, right?
Right.
In some way. And I don't know what the overlap is or if there's differences, and I kind of want to explore that. What's the intersection?
So my supposition here is that everyone has seen that nobody does continuous deployment. And they've taken to that to mean that there's a tools problem, and therefore they're all running out to write tools to do it. But the actual issue is probably a cultural problem. Like there's something at the organization, at the enterprise, at the whatever, that's stopping that. You don't have that high trust environment that allows you to do something that requires high trust, like automatically deploy to production because someone randomly commits to Git.
Right. I mean, it's always culture. If we just stopped exploring just because it was a culture problem, then we wouldn't have.
Oh yeah. I'm not saying we shouldn't have lots of tools, but I'm saying that's probably why we had that Cambrian explosion, because everyone is looking to build the tool that solves the mythical problem that's stopping everyone from doing CD.
Right. Well,
and better tools are always helpful, but they're not necessarily going to suddenly turn the tide and have everyone doing CD.
That's true. Yeah, if your organization starts your software will reflect that. That's
And so Josh, it's up to influencers like you to influence the culture.
Yeah, right. No, I just want to learn what the culture is. I want to know what the zeitgeist is, so at least I don't look ridiculous on DevOps Jeopardy. I just want to have a sense of what that is. Now, so I was just kind of hoping we can explore some of these things. Oh, by the way, what's the useful distinction between continuous delivery platforms? I think this is interesting. Continuous integration, continuous delivery, and GitOps, right? Why is one not the same as the other?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think GitOps is a very prescriptive methodology for doing CI/CD.
But what does it prescribe?
So I mean, it's pretty detailed, and I don't know it off the top of my head, and I'm too lazy to run Google. But the what I understand is if you call it GitOps, everything needs to be entirely driven by your Git/GitHub style events. And the other big thing that they push for is it should be a pull mechanism versus a push mechanism. So you have a GitOps operator or controller running inside of your infrastructure, which is generally Kubernetes. And that is basically polling Git or whatever and performing the reconciliation to make the appropriate changes.
So is the idea that the environment is pulling the Git repository as opposed to the Git repository pushing to the environment?
That's my understanding. So one of the things that worries me about GitOps is Git and like the GitHub workflows are mostly adequate tools to write software as a community.
Okay.
And have that software not be terrible. The interface was never designed.
I'll surprise you.
With deploying software in mind, right?
Right.
And so we're trying to retrofit these things that make sense in source control that I don't know if they make sense in like continuous delivery. Like deploying software to production reliably is a very hard problem.
Yeah.
And to tie it back to like Git push, Git branch, Git pull request, Git merge events seems to be a little bit like not giving the problem the like the credence it deserves.
Due diligence and all that.
Yeah, and so what you end up with is like it only works really well for apps that are kind of already fit into that cloud native / you can run them on Heroku type workflow.
Factor.
Where there's that, but it's actually probably more that there's not really a lot of orchestration or ordering. There's not a ton of like multi-project dependencies.
See, that's so, why I like this.
Like each
thing I saw yesterday.
Yeah.
The events are great for the exact thing you're just saying that these things
right.
are. Go on.
No, I think that was kind of it. Like, unless you have one of those magic apps, and if you have one of those magic apps, like why aren't you using Cloud Foundry or Heroku or insert favorite PaaS here?
Or just GitHub Actions, which would it's a one-step thing. If you've got a thing that has no dependencies, then anything will get you there, right? It's the ordering issue, and that's why I want these events, because I've got this project on which I've been toiling, and you've been so nice as to help me for the last 9,000 years. And this project there's some foundational bits that need to be done before everything else, then the bits themselves, and then after all the bits, there's another thing.
Yep.
Right. And it's sort of like, I don't want to deploy everything from a single place. I want that sandwich. It's like a sandwich. There's a stuff before, stuff after, and in the middle, there's a bunch of microservices that don't depend on each other.
Right.
There's like 5 of them that don't have any dependency on each other, but they do have a dependency on that foundational layer.
Right.
And then likewise, at the very end of it, there's this thing that has a dependency on everything else being there before anything can happen. So all 5 need to be there. So I was like, well, I want things to know about each other. They should know about this dependency graph, right? And you end up doing all these weird things. Like I've been doing kubectl patch to trigger redeployments, or I could just do kubectl deployment restart or rollout restart, whatever, that kind of thing.
Right.
But I end up having to teach my cluster about what is the dependency graph, Right. So is there some way? It sounds like Atomist has the tools to express dependencies through events. That's nice. Does nothing else? I thought Concourse was kind of gifted in that respect, that it had some features for that. I don't know though.
Yeah, it does. And there's other things that people do. Like there's some interesting tricks that Helm uses where they put a checksum of the manifest as an annotation.
Right.
So and for like a config map. And that way, if that annotation changes, therefore the deployment itself changes as well, and therefore the deployment triggers that rolling update.
Customize does that.
Right. And so there's tricks like that.
Yeah.
But tricks like that tells me that there's a smell in Kubernetes. And
Yeah.
that smell is that, like, if a deployment depends on a config map, then that deployment should be smart enough to like restart when that config map is changed.
But again, why should I have to write code to know about Kubernetes in my application when the platform itself?
Exactly. Yeah. Like you shouldn't have to write that code. Like maybe you have to write some annotations to say this deployment is dependent and should like roll if these 4 resources change. One is a config map, one is a service, one is maybe the version of a backend database or something like that. Right? I think things that would tell a deployment that something has happened and you should change. Because the alternative is you have to write your app to say, okay, the config map writes a file, the secret writes a file. I need to be watching these files and restarting myself if these change.
Yeah.
And then you're suddenly watching like file system inodes and doing all this stuff that like, it's supposed to be a 12-factor like ephemeral app that handles restart. So just let the damn thing restart.
Well, and it gets worse if you're doing environment variables, right? Like you can't restart those. You can't just refresh those. You do need to restart the process to get them, you know? And so so I'm not, maybe put another way, maybe there's 2 different distasteful things. One is you use a config tree, which is like the config map mounted as a volume, in which case, like you said, you end up in that business of refreshing, constantly pulling directories and doing all that kind of stuff. Or you need to be aware that you might just be killed at any given time just to be able to get refreshed environment variables. Yep. So there's complexity either way. Either you're monitoring file systems or you're constantly writing code as though your life could end right now, you know?
Right. But the thing is, we've been told that that's how we should be writing code.
Sure, I have.
Josh spoke from the mountaintop and told me I needed to make my applications
none of that
shut down gracefully.
No, I just my code breaks. It shuts down and kills itself all the time, even without the platform. So I'm just ready. I'm ready for that, you know. But no, yeah, exactly. I think there's like more the platform can do. Interestingly, side note here. In Spring Boot 2.4, which is just released, it's the GA version, we can draw configuration from a config tree.
Yes. And
we also have in Spring this thing called a refresh event. So if some external thing, be it a Spring Cloud config server or HashiCorp Vault or what was that thing that was so nice from the Cloud Foundry Vault thing?
Not UAA. I know the thing you mean.
Yeah, that one. There's all sorts of like sources for your configuration. Yep. Azure has a configuration thing, Google Cloud, AWS. So all those things could change. And if you can hit an HTTP endpoint in your Spring app, that'll trigger an event, and you can write code that responds to that event, and it'll refresh the configuration. It'll repull it, so you don't have to restart the app. But again, like all this, just so I don't have to restart the app and I don't have to lose continuity in something. Like, and the other thing is you've got, maybe it's okay to lose continuity. Maybe now we have, if Kubernetes decides to come reap your pod, then there's graceful shutdown, right? I can specify a 30-second interval between when it's taken out of the load balancer and when it gets actually kill -9, Yeah. So maybe that's enough, right? Right now, Spring Boot has support for that. You can actually say it'll be out of load balancer, but you can drain off any in-flight transactions. And maybe I don't need to write code to recalibrate, just restart. It'll never be more complicated than that. Well, anyway, I would like to know if there's a secret out there that'll make this stuff easier, because Spring does this. Spring's dope, but what about those poor schlubs using other things, those plebs? How are they solving these problems? It sounds like they need something in the orchestration and continuous delivery pipeline area. And my hunch is that there's got to be something out there. So, but I don't know. It's just a hunch. I just Googled it, by the way, doing as I do. So GitOps is a way of implementing continuous delivery for cloud-native applications. It focuses on a developer-centric experience when operating infrastructure by using tools developers are already familiar with, including Git and continuous deployment tools. So it's invoking continuous deployment as a definition of GitOps. So GitOps is, in theory, superset, or at least it comprises, or it includes some vacuous definition of continuous deployment. Now, the core idea of GitOps is having a Git repository, okay, not a big deal, that always contains declarative descriptions, declarative descriptions of the infrastructure currently designed in the production environment, and an automated process to make production environment match the described state in the repository. Bosh? If you want to deploy a new application or update an existing one, you only need to update the repository. The automated process handles everything else. It's like having cruise control for managing your applications in. Sorry, is my screen visible?
No.
Oh, good. It's like having cruise control for managing your applications in production. GitOps is version CI/CD on top of declarative infrastructure. Stop scripting and start shipping. That last sentence was Kelsey Hightower. It doesn't actually help me, but I love Kelsey, so I'm sure I'm missing something. Deploy faster, more often. Okay, to be fair, probably every continuous delivery deployment technology promises to make deploying faster and allows you to deploy more often. What is unique about GitOps is that you don't have to switch tools for deploying your application. Everything happens in the version control system you use for developing the applications anyway. And then here's Weaveworks. They say, when we say high velocity, quote unquote, we mean that every product team can safely ship updates many times a day, deploy instantly, observe the results in real time, and use this feedback to roll forward or backwards. So I don't know, all this sounds like continuous innovation to me. Easy and fast error recovery. Oh no, your production environment is down. With GitOps, you have a complete history of how your environment changed over time. This makes error recovery as easy as just issuing a git revert. Okay, and watching your environment being restored. The Git record is then not just an audit log, but also a transaction log. You can roll back and forth to any snapshot. That's the esteemed and amazing Alexis Richardson, the CEO or founder of the aforementioned Weaveworks. Okay, self-documenting deployments. Have you ever SSH'd into a server and wondered what's running there? With GitOps, every change to an environment must happen through the repository. You can always check out the master branch and get a complete description of what is deployed, where plus the complete history of every change ever made to the system. And you get an audit trail of any changes in your system for free.
See, there's an assumption there that you're not then, after doing the deployment, going in and fixing something with SSH because something broke, right?
Is that the goal? I'm not doing that anyway. I am just changing my Git repository and running the build again. It takes forever, but that's how I do.
Right, but you're not a bank with
right,
responsible for like 99.999% uptime of people's credit cards and things, right? So like there are still plenty of reasons a person might need to do some form of debugging or error testing that may require going in and changing settings on a specific server or a specific node or whatever. And that is not captured in GitOps. So I feel like, that description is very like pie in the sky aspirational.
Which I like aspiration.
Which I like, but my problem is there's not enough like attempt to meet people where they're at and say like that's what you want to be, but our like we get that nobody is actually there, right? Like, apart from maybe 2 unicorns.
Yeah.
So here's the middle ground. Here is a thing where you can get the majority of the benefits of GitOps, but also acknowledge the fact that you're a large company that has rules and regulations and promises that have to be kept that may require you to jump into a machine and like change some settings to get debug logs and look at some things, and then maybe change a config to work around a problem. And then later on, figure out how to then roll that back into your actual real deployment method.
Right, and if you update the replica set manually, the replica count right now, do that manually with kubectl. Right. And you forget to sync that back to Git, is that great? Like, who should win there? The manual intervention or the...
But also, like with GitOps, if you have that reconciliation loop and you change something underneath it because you need to, it might see that you're now not matching what it expects, and it might forcefully roll it back, right? And so
for that.
I think where the rubber meets the road, there's a lot more considerations to be taken in.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm being too pessimistic at the current state of running software in production, and maybe maybe for a lot of places that these aren't such problems anymore, but most folks I talk to are still in that camp of, running around saying that, a DevOps never runs SSH is great, but it's also, not realistic.
No, of course not. So there we go. We agree there's got to be more than just Git, even if it's not ideal. Like I think that promotion use case is a good example. I want to promote whatever's in staging, exactly what's in staging, not what's in Git that got to staging. I want staging. I want to promote that and just increase the replica count, right? Something like that. So I want something that pulls not from Git, but from the staging API, the Kubernetes API, Give me all that. Give me all the image versions. Give me everything except for the replica count size, And there's the other thing that's interesting for me is, what does it mean to parameterize stuff? So, I've been harassing you for 5,000 years about how to use customize. And
Right.
Customize is a very elegant hack. It's a disgusting, putrid hack for parameters, for variability. It seems like there should be an easier way. I mean, there's got to be an easier way. So one thing I've noticed is that if you can keep everything inside of Kubernetes, that's great, right? Your life is good. But invariably, something in Kubernetes is going to reference a resource that exists in the real world somewhere, right? That doesn't understand the concept of a namespace. So you end up having to partition those things by logical name, right? So in case in point, if I have a static IP in Google Cloud, well, there's only one console for all my static IPs, right? They're not in the namespace inside of Kubernetes. They're just in Google Cloud, and I reference them. So I need to now change my Kubernetes to account for this is the production static IP versus the development one, right?
Yep.
So and then you have to name your static IPs with this is the static IP for production, static IP for development, whatever.
Right.
Now you have to
and then when you're actually setting those, so you set those in like your load balancer configuration or your ingress configuration, right? And depending where you are, like what cloud you're running on, sometimes you use the actual IP, and sometimes you use the cloud provider's like resource ID for it.
Right.
And so you're getting those leaky abstractions where not only do you have to say, okay, we need to take this field from this list of IPs, but we need to, maybe it's an IP, maybe it's a string, maybe it's like some other thing, like a unique number.
Right.
And it's not always the exact same field. So sometimes it's like, I think in GKE, in Google, it's you put the IP address in the spec. In Amazon, you put it up as an annotation and you use the EIP ID thing. And so now you have like two different types of overlays depending on where your infrastructure is running, and you need to somehow make that work.
Well, so I haven't even gotten to multi-cloud, which is a reality I just don't know about, right? But actually, so for me, when I was using Google Cloud, it was the name of the IP in Google Cloud. So there's an object in Google Cloud in the annotation. And then but you do bring up a great point. I know that in AWS, when you look at the external IP for a service, it shows you DNS. It doesn't show you an IP.
Yep.
Whereas in Google Cloud, you get an actual IP. So again, what does this thing mean, and why is it not the same? Why can't I parse the different quads of the of the DNS entry? What's going on? Why is that broken? Oh, AWS, of course.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you want to create a DNS entry to point something at that address, well, now for Google, you're doing an A record, and for Amazon, you're doing a CNAME. Right.
Yeah. So you've got to care for that. And the other thing is, I absolutely do not want to recreate the IP on every deployment. I've got an existing one. It's fixed. My DNS is pointing to it. Do not recreate that. Do not throw it away and create a new one. So this idea of reconciliation, sometimes we need to get involved.
Yes, absolutely. And a really good example of that is if you're using certificates.
Yes.
Well, you need your DNS and your IPs to match certain values, and so you need to have those static IPs. You need to have those static names, and certainly if you're using, say, like Cert Manager with Let's Encrypt, if you change your load balancer IP a couple of times a day, it'll kick you out and say you've like hit a rate limit, because that's kind of a smell to them for you to be changing your production SSL certificate like IP addresses a lot. It's putting load on them that you don't want, but also it's like, are you being hacked? Like, is someone else hijacking your stuff?
Right. It's like, no, I'm just agile. Well, agile and this don't work.
Right.
The internet is.
No, I'm just in Kubernetes. This is how it works. Sorry, you'll have to take 1,000 changes a day from me.
Yeah, that's so exactly. I there's so many sandpits, and it feels to me like you can janky script your way around it. You can janky bash your way around all this, and I have. But I'm just wondering, there's smarter people than I that have been looking at this stuff for a lot longer. There's got to be some. What is the continuous delivery cognoscenti doing? That's what I want to try and figure out. And so, knowing I don't know, and knowing there's a whole bunch of stuff out there, I was kind of hoping we could look at some of these things. And maybe just today we could do a walking tour of what the core thing of each of these is. There's got to be some shtick or something. It'd be nice if every website said why I didn't use X, right?
Right.
Like why does this thing exist when 10,000 other things already existed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about Spinnaker, because you've got some familiarity.
Well, but before we talk about Spinnaker, have you, like, I assume our focus is going to be Kubernetes, right?
Yeah.
As the place we're going to be deploying things and testing it on. So have you heard of Tecton CD?
No, let's write that down.
All right. So bear with me. So Tecton is a framework for running like jobs and tasks, basically pipeline. So basically for crafting your CI/CD workflows. Was that?
It runs in your cluster?
It runs in your cluster. And then there's a foundation, the Cloud Native Continuous Deployment Foundation, something like that, that is wrapped around it. And it's actually what Jenkins X is built on top of.
Oh, so they extracted that out into, okay, we can start there.
Yeah. So basically, Tecton is a set of controllers / operators that give you the functionality to declare tasks and then wrap those tasks into a pipeline and then trigger those pipelines by events, right?
Is Jenkins X still a thing then?
Yeah, Jenkins X is still a thing. So basically you've got all this plumbing, which is Tecton, which is basically everything is described as a Kubernetes resource. So what Jenkins X and some other CI/CD projects do then is wrap that with like a user-friendly UX, right? So something that a human being like you or I could do and interface with without having to write thousands of lines of YAML.
I hate YAML so much.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to learn about that. That sounds interesting. I've got a podcast with James Strachan, who created Jenkins X, that I haven't recorded it yet, and I was hoping to, I'm gonna go into this one. This will be the one podcast where I know a thing.
Right.
It's the first time for everything. I figured it was my New Year's resolution in 2016 to know a thing, but
we're nearly there.
Yeah, nearly there. I'll get there. Okay, good. So can we look at that one? I guess I don't know. We already looked at.
Well, I mean, we don't have to look at that one. I just wanted to mention it because it seems like it's becoming the building block for one or more other tools.
Okay.
And so
does it predate Jenkins X?
Sorry?
Does it predate Jenkins X?
So I believe Jenkins X, was it CloudBees behind Jenkins?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I believe they were one of the seeds for it. So I think Tecton started to become a thing and Jenkins X was starting to become a thing. And they realized that if they built a foundation around Tecton and focused it on solving the plumbing problem, then Jenkins could focus on solving the UX problem.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So the other thing I want to remind people of is I hate this stuff and I'm not good at it. So if we make any progress in this at all, it'll be because you're here and because the technology was suitably easy enough, right? So I'm looking for easy. Like I don't want to be told I need to deploy Istio before I can do a pipeline, right? That is, nothing says go F yourself more than please install Istio before you can do this.
Right.
I'm probably going to regret that. You can use Istio's not that bad. Istio's fine. Just use it if you need to. What I'm saying is, it just seems like that's in a whole other thing to chew off for.
Yes. Istio is great if it solves the problems that you have. If it doesn't solve problems you have, then steer clear until you have those problems.
Right. Istio, and I'm starting to think, speaking of that DNS stuff and SSL and all that stuff, I'm starting to think Istio might actually be the solution for me. That actually, you know what I noticed? It's remarkably difficult to give each have each microservice own its own definition of DNS and SSL, because you end up creating lots of static IPs and lots of managed.
But that's what Ingress does. Is Ingress you share the static IP across lots of apps.
Well, you can also do it the other way. You can have one. Did you know? I figured this out. I did it the way you were talking about, right? And that worked. But what I realized is you can actually have an ingress for each app that has one entry for one pod or one thing, and then one
service,
one domain.
Yeah.
And that in turn can reference a different managed IP and a different managed certificate. So I can have 5 managed IPs and 5 managed certificates for production, and then another 5 for development. Bad idea, because you don't want to have so many IPs and so many certificates. It's expensive and it will cost money and it's wasteful, but it does work. And I want that because I don't want to have to. The thing is, like you just said, if you deploy an app and you try and set up SSL for it, but the app isn't alive, it's not responding to load balancing, so for whatever reason it failed, then you can't then deploy DNS.
Well, you can.
Well, I mean, the SSL will fail. It needs the
pod
to get live.
Well, so let me step through it real quick.
Yeah.
So when you do external DNS, it just needs your service to be online. So your load balancer to be online with an IP address. It doesn't need it to be responding.
Okay.
Right. And then when you do external DNS, when you do Cert Manager, it's not checking that your app is running. It's checking that your ingress is working. And so your ingress runs a little dummy app that Cert Manager checks against and passes or fails. And so then your app can start and become accessible, and it will have the right DNS and the right.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. You're saying the same thing as I am, which is, let's suppose my process, which deploys, it builds the NPM project or builds the Java project, the Spring Boot application. It then compiles it, and then it turns it into a container, publishes it to a repository, and then starts to do kubectl apply -k for your directory full EM, right? Well, what if it fails that first step when it's just trying to compile it and never gets to the point where it applies the ingress? So there's no ingress at all, right?
Right.
So one way to get around that is just to have one ingress and wildcard, like a wildcard ingress, and have one static IP, and then have a external, not managed SSL certificate. And that way you can just say, look, asterisk dot whatever, and that'll just work. You can plug that in later. Or maybe use a Spring Cloud Gateway and just have that be the one ingress controller, and then that can do virtual host. There's ways to get around it, but what I really want is to not hold up the resolution for SSL for other apps just because this thing failed to deploy, right? And so,
so I think you're missing something there, but we don't need to get into it because you absolutely should not be holding up one app for the other apps.
Well, if my ingress has all the definitions for all the apps.
No. So you have, each app has its own ingress and ingress rules.
Yeah.
But there's one ingress controller, which means there's one IP address.
Right. Oh no. I've got different IPs.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying is you're doing something wrong, and we should have a look at that at some point.
Yes. Well, now I know what to do for later today. No, I think I tried it. I'm pretty sure. You can't. I have one static IP, and I tried in the annotations to have every app mention that one static IP.
Yeah. After at some point early next week, we should have a look at that, and I'll take you through it.
Sounds like fun. Well, anyway, I got it working. To be clear, it just sounds like I'm wasting resources. It feels like it, and so if the solution is that there's just some obvious thing I'm missing that you can help me with, as opposed to deploying Istio, then I'd be happy. Yeah, it's all I want in the world is just to get as far as I can without deploying Istio.
Yeah. So did you want to now circle back and talk about Spinnaker?
Oh yeah. Okay. Let's talk about Spinnaker briefly. Okay. I was just gonna, let's do that. So we should get what we know on the table about these things that we know about, right?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, that'll give us some context and some assumptions that we can use carrying forward. So I talked about Atomist Go and Atomist skills. and this idea of event-driven, you know, do this in response. And so basically, Atomist is, it'll run your code in a container, and that container has access to an endpoint which has events. Seems simple enough to me, and you can emit events to an endpoint. That's dope. I like that. So what else? So Spinnaker.
Did you want to share? Did you want to share your screen so you can maybe bring up the Spinnaker website? We can talk through.
Okay. Can you see?
I can. I might take a minute to make the stream a little bit better because it's a bit ugly right now. Do that.
Do I want a table? You know, premature tabling is it's a smell. If you end up finding yourself in a Google Doc creating a table for stuff you don't know about yet, no good can come from that. That's a fact.
That is a fact.
I'm gonna go refill my water.
Okay. How long does it take a guy to fill up his water bottle? Oh, I can hear his tap. I can hear his tap running. He must be nearly there.
Okay.
Oh, I can hear footsteps. He must be approaching. There's a door. He's nearly here. There he is.
Hi, sorry about that.
No worries.
I'm trying to lose weight, so I'm using these Bulletproof Coffees. I don't know if you can see that. And they have one that's vanilla flavored. It's blue. I keep forgetting it's there, and every time I accidentally open one of them, I retch and almost die, and then throw them away. It's just putrid. I don't know why they would sell that. But, anyway, don't drink that.
No.
Okay, so what do we got? Are you showing us?
No, you're showing us your screen.
Awkward. So I've got some platforms. Let's talk about Spinnaker.
Yes. So first of all, I would say of these, I've played around with Spinnaker a fair bit. I've played around with Concourse a little bit, and I've played around with Drone a long time ago. Yeah. And then I've played with Tecton a little bit, and then Jenkins pre-X a lot.
So, okay, let's do that quickly. Did I do a good job earlier when I described what I thought was the stuff after CI that motivates CD, or is there a better definition?
No, I think you're right.
Is it things like Canary testing and build and bake? I mean, what's the
I feel like to me, build and bake is probably CI, whereas Canary is CD, right?
But Spinnaker does both.
It does, but it's been moving away from the build and bake.
Okay, cool.
So originally Spinnaker came from, was it Asgard, which was the original tool at Netflix? And it was kind of an all-in-one CI/CD tool.
Built using Spring Boot?
As Spinnaker has sort of been growing up, I think they've realized that trying to do both CI and CD in one tool is difficult. And also there's a lot more tools to handle the build and bake. Remember, when Netflix was early on, especially with, when they were doing Asgard, there weren't really any tools for doing build and bake.
Right. So this build and bake is take the code, turn it into a container?
Yeah. And so I see that there's an artifact repository somewhere, which is probably a Docker registry, right?
Today, yeah.
Yep. And that to me is the separation between CI and CD. Everything to the left of that is CI. Everything to the right of it is CD.
Okay. Everything to the left of the container registry, like GCR, like Harbor,
right?
Like what else? Okay. Oop, CD, not Adobe XD or Spring Cloud XD, Spring XD. Did you know we had a Spring called Spring XD?
I did not know that. Is that the Extreme Development Edition?
It's the precursor to Spring Cloud Dataflow. So what became Spring Cloud Dataflow? Spring Cloud Dataflow is the cloud native Spring XD, which is a data processing turnkey thing. And it had its own cluster management solution, but then the cloud hit, and it's like, okay, wait, let's just use Cloud Foundry, Kubernetes, and Mesos and Yarn and whatever.
And now, was it XD because that's the face people would make when they were trying to use it?
No, that'd be cool. Yeah, exactly. So everything to the left of the container registry, including running your CI, your tests, your even your smoke. So okay, what about smoke tests? That would be continuous delivery, right? That's the after I've deployed it into production and I'm running a tracer request, a bullet request.
So after you've deployed it to anywhere. So deploying to development is deploying it to staging. That's CD.
Okay.
Right. And so, yeah, smoke tests are usually done after deployment. Therefore, they are a CD thing. Whereas integration and unit tests, unit tests are definitely a CI thing. Yeah. Integration arguably could be either side.
Yeah.
Because you're deploying it somewhere because it has to run before you can run the integration test, right?
Right.
Or you are doing it as part of the build process and you're doing like a light integration test.
So Spring has the ability to stand up in code all the infrastructure that it...
Exactly.
So you can actually create an API as part of a unit test, and it'll actually have a port and a host, local host port and so on. And so you can get a lot of integration test stuff done before actually deploying anything.
Right. If you have integration tests, you should run them after every deployment, even if that's not part of your CI, right? Like you've written tests that say your software is working right. Why the hell wouldn't you then use that test to validate your deployments?
True. So that assumes, so that's a good point. You should write your integration tests with the assumption that part of the behavior will be variable, right? In Spring, like I just said, in Spring, it's easy to, in Java code, create a server.
Right.
That's not the same as putting it in a container and deploying it to Kubernetes. I'm just saying you can public static void main, spin up a web server on this host and port.
Right. But there's also a difference between, say, running Flapdoodle and running Amazon RDS, right?
Totally, 100%. Great example.
And so something might pass in Flapdoodle, which I'm using that example because it's Mark's favorite word.
That's an embedded MongoDB for those of you who are not. Right. It's a Java library you can use to embed Mongo. But you're right, talking to that versus like Zero Cosmos DB, which also supports the Mongo API, which is globally available in hundreds of dozens of nodes, dozens of data centers. Yeah, totally different thing. Okay, you're right. So you would write your integration test code with the assumption that you could run it in localhost, or you could change out the host and the port basically for those dependencies that you instantiate in code. You can either instantiate them or point them to existing things. And as long as you do that, you can reuse the integration test for the CI part and the CD part. Okay. So I guess that's a good question, which is, once you've run that test, once you've run the integration test and you run the smoke test and you run, that's pretty straightforward. You're going to do that no matter what. That's invariant, right? But what about Canary builds? What is that, right? That gives us a different kind of test. That's a test.
Well, so Canary, I mean, you don't have Canary builds, right? You have
Canary tests, rather.
Deployments.
Yeah.
Right. Or is there something? A Canary tests may be different to Canary deployments, or
Canary deployments. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. All right. Cool. I was like, whoa, is there some sort of like unit testing version of like Canary that I don't know about?
It's this idea that you're going to deploy part of your code and get actual feedback from the users.
Yeah.
And that's a different kind of test. But and you do it in production, but you do it for a subset.
Exactly.
So it's a totally different thing than what we've just talked about now. But yet it's also part of the automated harness that.
So yeah, and there's actually two types of, I think, Canary tests. One is you deploy one and you run some automated tests. You say it looks like it's working, and then you roll the rest of the deployment.
Right.
And the other one is, as you say, you roll it out to your users in a staged way. And I think the latter might actually be more like feature flagging than Canary testing. So I think one of the examples of that is Microsoft uses, I think they call them rings. And as a customer of one of their SaaS apps, you're placed in a ring, and you can be placed in like the early user beta tester type ring, and you get like the apps you get access to the Canary deployed apps versus the regular apps.
Right.
And that way they roll through testing of their users.
Right. But that involves making your testing infrastructure, your deployment pipeline needs to be aware of this weird trick that you're doing in production, right?
Right.
And so that's not just GitHub Actions, because once GitHub Actions is done, it has lost every memory of what you're doing. It doesn't know that there's a cluster. It doesn't care. It doesn't have any tentacles that reach into that part of the pipeline.
Yeah, and I haven't seen any of the GitOps tools really go into how you would solve doing Canary deployments, like complex Canary deployments like that.
Yeah.
I'm sure that someone has written it up, but I haven't really gone looking for it.
I know. But is that not a continuous delivery tool or continuous deployment tool?
Well, sorry, I don't think I think the folks who talk about GitOps would probably not like you calling Spinnaker a GitOps tool.
Fair enough. Okay.
Right, and especially because like Spinnaker, you do a lot of your configuration in Spinnaker.
Right.
And just have some hooks back to Git, whereas Git like you to have all of your stuff done in Git itself.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And especially, I think the Weaveworks folks have very strong opinions of what does and doesn't make a GitOps workflow.
Fair enough.
Now they, of course, make money on excluding other people from being part of GitOps, right? So there is some reason, there's some reason for them to define GitOps as what they do that differentiates them from other people.
There must be so I understand what you're saying, but let's go back to 6 years ago, and there's this zealotry around what is REST versus, or what is a microservice versus what is SOA, and it feels like sand in the hand. You can hold it, but not for very long, right? It slips out of your fingers, but there's got to be a reason. They're grasping for something, and they're very smart people. So my assumption is that I'm missing something, just like I know why microservices are not the same as SOA, right? But I know that it's not a technical discussion. It's about what motivates my movement to that technology. It's about agility, as opposed to just standing up something as a network API for the sake of standing up a network API, right? Yeah. So maybe our journey, maybe it's not about the continuous delivery platforms, but about the friends that we made along the way. That's
absolutely. Yeah. And that's because it's a cultural problem, not a tool problem.
Mm-hmm.
So Spinnaker, do you want to jump onto the Spinnaker website? Here is like what I've found to be one of the hardest things for people to handle when it comes to look at Spinnaker.
Yeah.
So if you maybe go to, I'm looking for their like architectural diagram of like, here is the application. Here is Spinnaker as an application.
Is this it?
No, that's kind of showing the concepts of, so okay, scroll back up a little bit. There was one more diagram up, I think. Yeah, so that pipeline. So that looks like any kind of CI/CD kind of pipeline, right?
Right.
Every tool has this. You have a bunch of discrete tasks that are tied together with pipelines with some sort of like logic wrapped around them for pass, fail, wait conditions.
Right.
And so like in Spinnaker, you define this pipeline in the Spinnaker web UI, whereas in say one of the other tools like GitHub Actions, you define it in YAML. And like
YAML.
Like multiple YAML files that reference each other, that link to other things. So there's like pluses and minuses with both of those, but I would argue for discrete standalone teams, having the ability to like almost like drag and drop your way through constructing a pipeline is probably a useful thing.
Big time. Especially now, if it builds on if it's a gold-plated, platinum recommended pipeline that everybody else in the organization has figured out, why would I want to reinvent that?
Right.
Let me cookie cutter that and get to production, you know?
But let's try and find the actual thing that shows what Spinnaker is, what makes up Spinnaker. So maybe go back up to the top. Have they got a search box? Can you just like search for like architecture diagram?
Oh, cool. Good job. Sir. Oh, there it is. Looks like it. There it is. Is that it?
Oh, look at this. You may need to zoom out.
What the?
So, like, you've seen the classic Netflix like microservices diagram, right?
Oh
where
yeah.
It looks like a filled-in circle.
Yeah, scratched in. Yeah.
Right. So
skip circle.
Netflix is really good at running thousands of microservices.
Yeah.
So they're more than happy to run, what's this, like
20?
a dozen to 20 microservices to do a fairly simple application. But name one person who wants to deploy all of this so they can do continuous deployment on one app.
But I think the assumption is that by the time you care about CD, it's definitely not just one app. That's why I'm curious about it, because there's got to be some sense of how these things relate, right? Otherwise, I just use GitHub Actions or Travis, whatever, right? It's got to be more than just one.
It is, but the thing is, what you're looking at is like a steep learning curve. This is like, it's a lot of work to deploy and run these so that you can deploy and run your own app.
Truth, yeah, but amortized over multiple apps, it starts to become valuable. I agree with you.
Yeah, it does. But you still have to do that initial work.
Right.
And
that's
so
why Armory
initially, you had to deploy each of these things as individual VMs in Amazon.
Oh.
Right. When they brought in the Kubernetes support, they started to build in doing it in Kubernetes, and then they built a tool called Halyard. And Halyard is basically an installer for Spinnaker, and it mostly manages the lifecycle for all of these applications. So it starts to become a little bit more accessible and manageable. And also a lot of these things like aren't that difficult. Like from memory, like front, which one is it? I can't remember which one it is, but one of these is the like microservice that sits in front of your object storage. And it's like a shim to, make it so that you can work on top of Amazon S3 or Google Cloud file storage. I think it's front 50 and still kind of work. So a lot of these are fairly simple on their own to run, but there's still fucking a dozen to 20 of them. So it does add up and cause difficulty.
Yeah, and as long as it works out of the box, I'm okay with 12 of anything. But it's the minute I have to maintain or configure stuff, I get...
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, this is part of your production infrastructure. And in fact, you could argue this is the most important part of your production infrastructure.
The on-ramp.
Right? Because without this, in theory, you can't fix your apps that are running in production. So you have to make sure that Spinnaker is up and Spinnaker is working and Spinnaker is happy and that you know how to debug it and that you know how to fix it. So caring and feeding can become a problem. Okay, having something like Halyard to do the initial install is great, but if something goes wrong, you still need to figure that out. Hopefully, whatever went wrong can be solved by restarting the microservice that's broken if you can figure out which one that is. But
yeah, that's true. There's obvious complexity here. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Is there a Helm chart for this, or how do you get it in a cluster?
Yeah, there is a Helm chart. There's a few ways of doing it. The Helm chart seems to be the most common, and it installs Halyard and then runs all the commands to configure these using Halyard.
So here's the breakdown of I want to try the Helm chart in a minute, but here, okay. So
if you actually want to try the Helm chart, you should try that first because it'll take 10 minutes to install.
Right. We'll let it run in the background. Good idea.
Yeah.
So if you install it, if you want a more serious, okay, no, I just want to try it out. Quick Start Solutions. Hi.
Kubernetes Helm chart.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. All right. This is great.
But I really wanted that to work.
I know.
Can I just try this? It's only a month ago.
Yeah, you can try that.
I mean, why would they deprecate the Helm chart? That seems...
Well,
really...
actually, so here's the thing. I just realized you're so I think Spinnaker maybe hadn't updated their documentation. So basically the Helm community has deprecated the community Helm chart repos because there was basically 4 people that were trying to manage 1,000 charts and it was too much. And so Helm basically said, hey, you'll need to own your own Helm charts. So I'm wondering if they just haven't taken on owning their own Helm charts or they haven't updated their docs. I think I even created a issue for them to tell them they needed to do it. Why don't you go to like GitHub/Spinnaker and we'll see if we can find hints about Helm charts in there. Yes, click Spinnaker, issues, search for Helm. Nope.
Yeah.
There it is. No one is assigned. I wonder if it's just been completely ignored.
It's Signun. Special interest.
Signun.
It's like they could have just rendered an ASCII. Like there should be a bot that renders a middle finger in the issue. You know, stale. So
this sadly tells me that no one cares about installing Spinnaker on Kubernetes.
I don't know. Whatever.
Actually, I did see mention of a Spinnaker operator, so maybe we can look at that next.
Okay, let's do.
So back on the docs. Under the setup Spinnaker, I think it was listed there.
Oh, yeah, try it out.
Yeah.
Quick Start Solutions.
Spinnaker operator. The top one.
Oh.
All right.
Spinnaker Helm chart, Spinnaker operator, this one, right?
Yeah, no, that was it. You were there.
Okay. Huzzah.
Okay.
Operator hub.
So where are the install instructions?
Well, this is a useful website that you clued me into before. This will actually manage. This isn't just the inception. This will actually do more than Helm. It'll manage it afterwards, in theory, right? Operators
in theory. Okay, so this doesn't give you any information on how to. Oh, is this how to deploy it? No. This is an example of how to run. How to install Spinnaker, but it's not showing us how to install the operator. How does the operator hub not tell you how to install the operators listed on it?
Well, it says Spinnaker operator.
Yeah, but like it doesn't. Where's the install for the operator?
I feel like I'm missing something.
Me too.
Basic install, alpha.
What if you go to? Let's try something else. Go to artifacthub.io.
Spinnaker?
Yep.
Oh, schmancy. That's nice. That is nice. Look at
Well,
that.
hang on. Slow down. Don't just click on the first one you see.
Sorry.
Go back.
Oh.
So this is a CNCF tool that lists Helm charts and operators. And so now we can see we have, so OpsMX, whoever that is, manages a Spinnaker Helm chart. Duadu Helm charts does. Armory has an operator.
That's the business.
The operator framework has an operator.
Armory,
yeah.
That's a company around Spinnaker.
That's right. So they have support for, they sell support for, oh, look at the Spinnaker operator updated 2 years ago.
No.
An image security rating, D.
Well, at least it wasn't an F. Let's deploy this.
How cool is that?
This first one looks legit. It's a month ago. It's got a verified publisher rating. The publisher owns this repository. Whatever that means. Org, OpsMX.
Right.
Provider of continuous delivery solutions.
Yeah. So I would say that we should go with, I would say we can go with that one.
Okay.
So let's click on that, and then that'll give us the Helm.
Is this bit?
No, but this is wrong. Because they're just giving the stable. Okay, this is someone who's doing something funky and have like republished the stable. Yeah, I would pop out of this because this is, it may work, but it's probably not a good idea. And that was the OpsMX one?
Yeah. Here's some Google folks. They're contributors to Spinnaker, so maybe this one.
Look who else is on that list.
Username taken. Yeah. Oh, hey, that's my guy. That's my guy.
Who's that? Who's that?
That's my guy. That's Paul.
Yeah. So this again is a fork of the stable, like the one that's been deprecated.
But does it work? It was updated 3 November.
Well, have a quick pop back and look at the Armory operator.
Okay.
Because theirs was updated really recently.
Does it cost money?
Let's find out. Deploy Armory operator, deploy Armory Spinnaker. I mean, I say we just do this and see what happens.
Okay. I created, let me authenticate here. Cloud.console, something like that. I like that first one with that Paul guy though. It's probably the better one. Wrong cluster. Okay, connect, copy pasta. Okay. Okay, so now you're saying I should just curl this directly into bash. just run this code from the internet. Is that the idea?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Always run code from the internet.
It's probably fine. Okay. We're having fun. This is fun. Okay. Happy helming. Look, they got the. I didn't even know there was an ASCII character for that, but how cool is that? Look at that.
There's a little Kubernetes ASCII character.
I don't know how they did that. I didn't know there was a character for that. That's
well, I when you have CNCF money, you make things happen.
Yeah, new fonts and everything. I'm gonna make sure whatever project I create has a ASCII character in it.
Right.
I'm gonna use Wingdings. That's gonna be my something from Wingdings.
You know how I know you're old? You say ASCII character and not emoji.
Oh. Shh, hush, hush. Okay.
Do you remember the ANSI code for that one?
Not offhand. Where's my chart? Helm install Armory Spinnaker. Oh, I didn't create the namespace of Prairie. It'll probably do that, right? It'll figure it out for me.
Depends what version of Helm you have.
Brand new, latest and greatest. So
all right.
Nope.
So if you rerun that and do a -- create namespace, it should. No, it'll create it for you if you. Oh, do it your way. Yeah.
I didn't run it the other way, so you're saying like that?
Yep.
Explosion. Huh? Oh.
Oh. So when you want to install operators and CRDs in Google Cloud, you need to do something with permissions.
When I incept the cluster?
Yeah, so if you just start like that error through to is forbidden, if you dump that into Google and add GKE, it'll probably tell you the thing you have to run.
Fun.
It's easy enough. I just can't remember off the top of my head. Yeah, that's it.
So, I mean, I like to just run stuff off the internet. That's how I roll. So, okay, let's see. Cluster role binding. Cluster role equals cluster admin. User equals.
And that's whatever your Google Cloud. No, it's got to be your Google Cloud service account.
Service account.
Yeah, actually, so it tells you actually if you do gcloud info grep account, it'll tell you what it needs to be.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, it is. Oh, so this is a wow. This is a personal Google Cloud account.
Yeah.
Oh, you got dollars to burn.
I just don't have anybody that likes me enough to let me spend their money, so I just use mine. Okay, so I guess I just run this.
You just run that, and so that gives your user.
Nothing.
Oh. Oh boy.
Wait a minute. Okay, so I have a different idea. Hold on 1 second. 1 second. Different one. Different idea. Different thing. Okay. Connect to this one. I don't want, like, if I have to, the last thing I'm going to do is I'll create a new cluster, but
right.
It might be very slow. So I want to avoid that. I think I did this one. Like I can github.com. Well, okay, wait, first let's try that. Yay, okay. So I created that one with more permissions.
All right. Hey, let me show you a thing you can do.
Sure.
If you do hang on, go back to that. I wanted to see what that was. Because there's a kubectl can I, which will tell you if you're authorized to perform an action. So you could have run kubectl, whatever that error was, you could have done kubectl can I, and then done like create and the thing.
Like CAN.
So just, yeah, I think that's it. So just do a like can I and then -h, and let's figure out that's even the right command. No. Oh boy. Well, let's just start with kubectl help and work our way down. Is it maybe kubectl auth? Then maybe it's under a. You know what? Kubectl
Can I command?
Kubectl auth can I?
That is the coolest thing.
Right.
So they can do this, but they don't have time to update, customize. What is going on?
Right.
Did I?
Two R's in cluster roll.
Sure.
All right. Ignore the warning, but it says yes, you can do it.
Okay.
So that's good.
Oh yes,
so,
that there, right here. This little bit right here.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's hot sauce. Good stuff. Okay, so now let's helm our way to production. So I'm going to run this crazy thing here again.
Yes.
Okay, now we're having fun. We're having fun. This is fun.
This is fun.
Create namespace. I do lots of like, my whole world is check if this thing exists, or, pipe, create it, right?
Yep.
Like LSLA file, pipe, touch file, whatever, or gcloud list, whatever, pipe, gcloud create. And I just hate it. I just wish, I'm glad that Bash makes it easy. I don't know how life would have, is that possible in regular Windows before PowerShell? Was that like, what does that particular idiom look like, So this is going to take a minute. Is that true? I mean, we should probably, we could make coffee or something.
Well, hang on a second. So this, I would have thought this one would be pretty quick because it's just the operator and then the actual installing of Helm itself, Spinnaker itself.
Yeah.
Unless part of this deployment is to also deploy your first Spinnaker. You could jump into that namespace and see what's going on.
Ooh. I was just with it.
Okay. So now we have an operator. So let's do a get all in that namespace.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So that's pretty basic. It's your operator and like a service, not even a service, just services. And yeah.
It's really hard to look at. What am I looking at?
I mean, you're just looking that there's a pod and it's running and it looks healthy. Right?
It's really long.
And so if you do a kubectl get CRD, you should also see there's some Spinnaker related CRDs.
Ooh.
Right? So that looks good to me. So now we need to go back to the Spinnaker doc and see what it says about the next step.
Okay.
So Helm delete. Okay, add Spinnaker service. That's what we're looking for.
Wow. You know, that old joke about did you get your K-lock of code done today?
Whoa, what are you doing? What are you running?
Well, it's set to
Randomly running stuff.
Nothing can go wrong if you just trust people.
So there's no, because it's looking for a file, Spinnaker Service.yaml. Does that exist?
That's awkward. Where is that file? Set
I don't know.
Spinnaker Service.yaml. I don't think I saw one of those.
Right. So we might need to go to their, actually, maybe it says it under configuration. Oh no, that's the operator. It's the Spinnaker service. So that's the next set is
Spinnaker Service.
All right, so you've got your configuration of the Armory Operator, and then after that, there was configuration of the Spinnaker Service. Here's what we're looking for.
You have to, these have to all be passed in as -- set keys and values. Okay.
Or as a YAML file.
Oh,
for example, values. And so
values.yaml?
As you can use the default values.yaml. So maybe we don't need a -f. So pop back to the command they gave us and just, no, you want that set. That's the one thing you did want.
Okay. So I want to get rid of the file though, right?
Get rid of the file. File to download.
Oh,
what
spaces after the new line thing?
Yeah, that'll do it.
Okay.
Okay. So now if you do a kubectl get all in the operator namespace, maybe we'll see more stuff.
Okay. Get all. Ooh.
Okay, so that's nothing new, but actually it's putting stuff in the default namespace. So do a -n default, or just don't specify one.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
So probably in that configuration we could have specified a namespace to use.
Oh well.
But that's fine.
Clusters are the new namespace. I'll just blow it away and start again.
So now would be a good time to go and get yourself some coffee. So why don't you do a kubectl get pods --watch. Yep. And then we can pretend we're watching this, but actually just go and make coffee.
Okay.
And come back in a couple of minutes.
Well, okay. So what did that just buy? Well, okay, wait. Actually, we should take notes here. This is the thing that worked for us so far, right?
Yeah.
So where's our Google Doc of sadness and despair?
Now, I will say one thing. I'm not a huge fan of using operators to install a single piece of software.
Okay.
Because I'm effectively installing a piece of software to be allowed to install one other piece of software.
Yeah.
So to me, I prefer operators when you're maybe doing something as a service. Like if you had a group at your job that wanted to provide like a Spinnaker as a service to anyone that wants one, that to me is when you want to reach for an operator, rather than just like installing that one piece. So normally I would chase after a better Helm chart or something, but this seemed like the easier way to just get this up and running for now.
It does, for some definition of work, seem to work.
Right.
But yeah, there's a brief moment in time when you could deploy Spinnaker on top of Cloud Foundry. And so Greg Turnquist built a spectacular installer program. It was a WYSIWYG UI. You pointed it to your Cloud Foundry install and then just went and got coffee and it spun up all the things on Cloud Foundry, and that was nice. It'd be nice if there's a WYSIWYG UI I could just point it to and like, here's Google Cloud and here's my GKE instance, here's my TKG Tanzu Kubernetes Grid instance.
Well, unfortunately, in this like declarative world that we have to live in Kubernetes, doing things like WYSIWYG UIs is like frowned upon.
Why?
Because we're all like hardcore infrastructure developers, man. We can't click on GUIs.
I guess. I mean, but Spinnaker is all about, it's a GUI. You're not using YAML files to deploy Spinnaker. You're using. Lost on me. Okay, well, okay. I think the font's big enough.
I really do need to go make myself a coffee or something.
You do.
So I will be right back.
Right on. I'll be back in half a second as well.
I just had to verify I'm wearing pants before I stood up on a live stream.
2020 problems. Okay. Is anything working? Ooh, crash loop back off. That's not great. That's not great. Wow. Okay, so we've got a repository here called deployment, and this is the one I use to incept the cluster, which allowed me to install Spinnaker. So this cluster command, everybody else can use if they want. Development, oh, which reminds me, I can delete this. Can't I? CD code, beautiful podcast deployment, overlays, junk.
Did it work? Did it work? Are we working?
Not yet. Let me see here.
Where are we at?
Hold on, I'm just getting the I'm going to note the successful command I used to incept that cluster that had the permissions that was able to then deploy. So
Right.
what did I do?
I wonder if you'll see my drink. You can. Oh, look.
Oh, what is that?
I have a green drink in front of a green screen. So
That is not good.
I'm all in on.
Absinthe.
I'm all in on my matcha. So I have some matcha tea, matcha latte, and then I also have some matcha Kit
Some green
Kats.
Kit Kat. I was gonna say a little early in the afternoon for absinthe, but you know, teach their own. I suppose. Let's see. I created a cluster. How did I do that? Wait for it can deploy. KubeCare, G-Cloud containers. This file. So the command that we would have needed to create a cluster that was capable of running Spinnaker, it's here. Oh, no. I'm just going to link to that file.
I have to disappear in a couple of minutes because of meetings.
Work, yeah. Okay, so this is all I did was I had scopes compute. I did the old classic scopes GKE default, which is basically all of them, right? Now it's all locked down. You need to scope every little thing, but I just decided to use the old ones. That gives me root privileges, basically. So that worked. I'll use that next time. Now, as for this, lots of crash loops. Not good. But
so that's pretty common because often they're waiting on the other things to come up before they work. But also we didn't do any sort of configuration, so who knows if something needed to be set. So just do a get pods on it now and just see what's up and what's not. And then I have this theory. If I can't get your app up and running and do something useful in 20 minutes,
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Right, I'm with you on that. So this one failed, which is fair. It needs AWS credits, but the other one seems to be okay. So like there's two front, oh no, they're both errored. Okay. Well, no, Echo needs a hug. So does front 50. So is it the same?
Yeah, so I think front 50 is a thing that backs your object storage. And so maybe there is something we need to set for object storage.
AWS makes sense.
So the Helm chart would spin up a Minio instance and just use that locally.
Okay.
But I'm guessing this operator doesn't do that. And so it's probably expecting you to have configured that. So if you pop back to the install instructions, I bet you that some of the settings are about setting your AWS.
It'd be very awful if it was, here's the command you run to deploy Spinnaker, and then right after, but before you run that,
right,
you specify a config map. Like, oh, come on. Where did I even put it? Is this it?
It was.
Whatever. I'll just go back to here. This one, Armory.
Yeah.
Wait, what? There's a chart?
Yes, that's what we just installed.
Okay, wait.
These are the steps you did. And so scroll down to the Armory instance or Armory cluster service here.
Yeah, and then there's
a so if you click on the config,
which I did over here.
Aha. Okay, there it is. So you can see the persistent storage type.
Yeah.
So I bet you for Google, we can set GCP or Google and then specify a bucket and either specify a key or set up the Google rights to give the cluster access to your storage. Do a search for Minio and see if it has anything about doing Minio. Nope.
No
yeah.
Minio. GCP.
Google?
I don't mind using AWS. Does it expect everything else to be running on AWS?
I don't know.
Okay. And do I have to, what is all these?
All right. I'm going to say that there's going to be a bunch more configuration you'll need to be doing to make this work.
Yeah.
More so than we have time for.
Sure. Okay.
So let's call this one a fail.
Yeah, not easy.
I mean, what's the time been since we did that Helm install? Probably close to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Maybe as we go through, and that'll be our sniff test. If we can't install it and like access it in 20 minutes,
yeah,
then we move on.
But these are huge multi-tenant systems. Like, are all of them this complex? What does it look like to do with Flux or whatever the other one?
Tune in for next week's episode where we discover exactly that answer.
How much suffering can Paul take?
Right?
Yeah, it's the one day. All right, are we calling this one a wrap? It's been.
Well, I mean, I've got to go. If you want to keep fighting the good fight, you can.
Nope.
But
okay. So next week, I think you and I will meet again. Same Kubernetes time, same Kubernetes channel.
Yeah. So I think now we've done the hard one. I say we do drone.
Okay, let's do drone next week.
Next week we'll do drone.
Sounds good.
Cool. Now we might be at a different time because I would suggest that it might be someone else's turn to be doing the code stream.
So,
but we'll coordinate something, and your multitude of followers will figure out where to find us.
This one, is that right on? No, PCZR. Is that right on Twitter?
That is right on Twitter. Yes.
And there we go. So find us there on Twitter, and we'll notify you when we stream next.
Absolutely.
Continuously.
Cool. And I have an outro.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
So that's pretty exciting. Actually, do you want to see the outro?
Yeah, but I'm not
going to show you. I think I can show you the outro. Stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
And then I think I can do this. And so now you're like seeing what I'm seeing.
I'm seeing you.
Right. And so now you see like that weird extra third person, right?
Yeah.
Now if I hit the outro button, are we ready? Are you ready?
Okay.
It's gonna happen. Oh, it didn't happen.
Womp, womp.
Oh wait. There it is.
Oh,
I used the wrong outro. Oops, but that's all right. It's still an outro.
Wait, do you have the other outro? Do you have the good one? You can't just set it.
All right, let me see. Let me see real quick.
It's the season. I'm going to consider this whole 2-hour adventure a catastrophic failure if you don't deliver on this promise of an outro.
Tanzu TV.
That's all I've got.
Come back. Transition. Oh boy.
Wait, can you and I? Can I ship you?
All right. Well, here's our intro.
Yeah. I'm a fan.
Thing and oh god. I accidentally switched stream. Oh, I'm so bad at this game. All right. Now here's the outro. There it is. And that's it.
Well, I like that. But Paul, can I suggest? I want to send you a large roll of paper that's red with some concentric circles drawn on it, and I want you to burst through the paper and go abri abri abri. That's all, folks. And then,
we could work on that.
With apologies to Porky Pig. That'd be so great.
Wait, why are you apologizing to Porky Pig? You saying it's an insult to compare him to me?
Well.
No. I see.
Pass the sriracha for that foot in my mouth.
Did I just hear race cars in the background or something?
Yeah, I'm on. Again, we've talked about this. I have my vent open because it's actually kind of not freezing outside, and there's a lot of bored people with Ferraris driving around San Francisco, and somebody just drove down the street. I'm 12 floors up. if I closed the vent, I would still hear that though.
That wasn't just your concierge bringing your car around so you could go out later?
Yeah, right. No, it's just some random noise.
Fair enough.
12
And now
floor.
your vent is open so you can like slide through it and stab some folks?
Oh, for Among Us? Oh yeah, that would be great. We should do that. If like, I want to get our mutual friend Ray Sang. He had this from Google, also Kubernetes Ninja. He had this very good idea. He wants to play as Kubernetes, and all of us will be named Pod 1, Pod 2, Pod 3 in Among Us. And then when he's the imposter, he can kill all the different pods.
That works, but he has to actually code it back to a Kubernetes cluster, so those pods actually get killed when we get killed.
Right. That'd be so cool. You could do that. You could build something where if it shows the animation, some OCR, if it shows the animation, then trigger an event or whatever.
But I think we're going to do a Among Us like Christmas special for Tanzu Tuesdays.
Yeah, that was Tiffany's good idea.
Yeah.
Great, right?
Yeah. So we'll do that. And we might even get some of our long-term viewers in. Like we got Sweet Killer 9, who's got the right name for it.
Okay.
And maybe we could get see if we can get Spencer. Spencer would be amazing in Among Us.
Oh, he's so good. Are we talking about Gib?
Yeah. Is there any other Spencer? He's literally the only Spencer in the world.
I just didn't want to get so excited about the Spencer that I love, which is Gib, and have the discussion and then realize you were talking about some other inferior Spencer,
No, that's the one.
The one and only.
But I played the outro and we're still talking. So let's just let's
one more time.
Let's one more time and then I'll hit the stop button. Are you ready?
Bye. No, you hang up first. No, you hang up.